So, hello everybody. I am Chris Rivera, Director of Client Relations with Entigrity Offshore Staffing. And I hope everybody out there is safe and sound heading into this Labor Day weekend. If you're doing some plans or traveling, make sure stay socially distanced as much as you can so we can get through this crazy times per se. And very excited to announce a special guest with me today, Frank Stitely. He's the owner of Stitely 𝐚𝐜𝐬𝐬 CPAs in the Washington, D.C. area. He's been doing this for almost 30 years now, and we look forward to some input on practice management and development. All right, so we're going to talk about that in a second, but Frank, please introduce yourself and give us some background and take it away.
Thanks, Chris. I'm really happy to be here. This is a fun topic for me. I've been speaking about it a lot since April, as you can imagine. I am the managing partner of Stitely 𝐚𝐜𝐬𝐬 CPAs. We're a local firm located just west of Washington, D.C. I am also the CEO of 𝐟𝐢𝐫𝐦𝐬 Practice Management, which is cloud-based practice management software for CPAs and accountants.
Awesome.
This has been a weird year. This is the tax season. It never really ended for us. I hope someday it does, just in time for next year.
Right. It's between the extensions and then the PPP loans, and it's just one thing after another, and a couple deadlines coming up, and then we get to breathe, and then right back into the traditional season. So let's get to it with firms, hopefully not scrambling anymore, but the idea of a practice management and development situation here. So talk to us about that. Not only the owner of a CPA firm, but you have a company here that provides great value. So can you just break it down a little bit, some of the basics, and then kind of where firms should start per se?
Sure. Practice management to me, or effective practice management, is putting the right people in the right places with the right resources at the right times. What that means is that deliverables to your clients, tax returns, compilations, reviews, bookkeeping, bank recs, follow a standardized system from beginning to end so that you know where everything is in your practice. Just this morning, I do what I call a project scrub, where I went top to bottom through every project I'm in charge of, which is about 120 right now. And what I'm looking for is projects that are hung up in process. The best way, or I should say the worst way, to end up with a dissatisfied client is a client who contacts you after 3 weeks because you haven't been in any contact with them yet.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's very important to never forget about them. They're the most important part. And so in going along that, what's some of the best practices that you do and that you recommend, and how do you kind of work with the firms?
The best practices to me center around creating a workflow for your firm that's, first of all, customized to your workflow and also makes sense. We do a lot of work both with our CPA firm and with 𝐟𝐢𝐫𝐦𝐬 Practice Management with Lean Six Sigma principles, which basically say any step that either isn't required by the government or doesn't deliver value to a client has to go. And that shows up in some weird ways. For instance, when you scan, how you scan, when you ask questions of clients, how many levels of reviews you do. It's a balancing act, and you have to be deliberate about how you design those systems.
Yeah, Lean Six Sigma is a great process in place to kind of identify and also make sure everything is streamlined. And so if a firm's trying to implement this now, right, newer firms out there trying to get their feet off the ground, where should they start?
I would start with diagramming what your current process looks like from beginning to end. Write down every step, and very simply at the beginning, start out with who's responsible. Is the firm responsible, or is the client responsible? That's sort of the first level. And I can tell you that the biggest problem in practice management is that we don't bring clients into the process or don't consider them a part of it. They tend to be pretty much the biggest hang up sometime if we're not communicating with them, if they don't know what they're supposed to do and when. And then after you've diagrammed the current process, then start putting in who actually within the firm carries out those tasks. And then finally you come back to it and you say, okay, that's what we're doing. What might we be doing in a better way if we step back at a 30,000-foot level and say, hey, we have 25 steps to delivering a personal tax return. Is there any wonder it takes us 4 weeks to get that done? Maybe we can cut it down just a bit.
Right, absolutely. You want to make sure, especially with the client, that you properly onboard them, right? And so having the view of what you're doing now, right? You got to find what works, what doesn't work, and obviously what doesn't work, how do you fix that? And that kind of leads us into the technology that's out there, the cloud technology. And so, I mean, firms that have moved over to being virtual, are they fully virtual? Sure. Are they partially virtual? Sure. But the idea of the technology in place, first off, there's so many solutions. So, and where should somebody start?
I think you have to start with looking at who works a lot with accountants, CPAs, bookkeepers. And the reason for that is you want to find a vendor that has an existing relationship with whatever tax software vendor you're using, like a CCH or a Pro Series. We've been virtual entirely now for about 7 or 8 years. And the great thing about the IT firm we use is that if we have a technical problem with, say, CCH tax software, they contact the vendor. We don't have to contact the vendor and try to pretend that we're technical enough to try to figure that problem out. So that's where you start. You want to start with somebody who does this a lot, who's already run the applications you're going to run. I think the average CPA, I think I saw, uses somewhere around 50 applications in the course of a week. That's a lot. And if you think about it, that's true. We have all kinds of little utility stuff, and you really need to start with having a firm that understands those applications.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah. You got to start somewhere. And a lot of times, though, there's hesitation. And so I see a lot of firms just having being stuck in their own ways, and it's not broke, right? So I fix it, but it just, there's a lot of hiccups still. There's a lot of hiccups. So why do you think there are hesitations, and how should someone kind of overcome that?
Well, I think one of the biggest hesitations is security. And I think that's one of the real strengths of actually going to the cloud. If you think about it, no small business can afford the level of security hardware and appliances that are necessary to keep your data safe. The bad guys aren't anymore a 15-year-old trying to change the geography grade. The bad guys are using robotic process technology, and they harvest all the data they can get. They then go back later and say, hey, what can we do with this data? And guess what CPAs and tax preparers have? We have direct deposit information, which is almost the holy grail of information, because they can steal money directly from people this way. The reason we went to the cloud was almost entirely security, because we realized that we had no possibility at our firm size of being able to afford what we needed. And the people we work with have full-time people who do security all day long. It's not 100%. My wife's in cybersecurity. She says there's no such thing as secure. There's only levels of risk. And in the cloud, your levels of risk are many times fewer than they are with on-premises servers.
Yes, well said. There's no such thing as what is it, fully secure or even privacy anymore. I look at all these. I read the fine print, whether you go to a bank or you're just reading contracts, and it's like, what can you change about what companies disclose? And it's like nothing. It's like, okay, right? So no, it's very important to make sure, one, reputable company, try to work with the one you're with now, see how they have everything being implemented, and just let now with back to the client, right? So onboarding and showing the clients, and so how do you reassure if somebody's just used to bringing in documents or used to one-on-one meetings, and then all of a sudden they have to send things digitally, so there are hesitations there. What would you say you could recommend, kind of how to make the clients a little bit more at ease with this?
I think the hesitation is probably more in the CPA and accounting firm's mind than it is with the clients. They're doing e-banking, they're doing Amazon, they're doing Facebook. They expect to interact digitally with their major service providers, brokerages. You basically can't talk to a brokerage person anymore if you're trying to get in contact with some of the major ones. They expect us to be digital. And it really, and the pandemic really just accelerated a trend. In our firm, over 75% of our clients loaded all their documents to Clarity, and we took it from there. This past year with the pandemic, it was 85%. It gives you an incredible set of efficiencies. And if you are careful and manage the relationships with clients, it is zero hurdle.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I see that too, where the one or two of either partners or associates mindset encompasses what maybe 50 or 100 people are thinking, right? And so you're absolutely right when saying that. You haven't even asked the client, and so if you're thinking this, everyone else is, absolutely right. No, the clients may be wanting to do that, and so they're just waiting for you to tell them. It's your job to kind of lead them and guide them along the way and make them feel comfortable through this. So yeah, absolutely right. All right, so we got practice management in place. Talk about some of the cloud technology, security being the number one question and concern. Now, we're remote working, right? So is your firm, you guys are virtual last 7-8 years, but are you still working remotely, or how's that set up right now?
Right now, we're working sort of how employees want to work.
Okay.
We have people coming in 2 to 3 days a week. I do what I've done for probably a half dozen years is I work sort of hybrid days. I'll come into the office and work 4 or 5 hours to be available to staff. And then I go home and get my real work done, work for a few hours at night when it's relaxing. And I can also beat the traffic that way. I mean, I can leave the office at 2 o'clock, beat the DC traffic, and I'm home and I'm happy and I'm ready to work again without any interruptions for a few hours.
Absolutely. It's most companies in other industries, because remote working, God, it's been around since the 80s. It's nothing new. It didn't start, and back in March or April this year. Many industries do not have offices; they're fully virtual. But yes, in the accounting industry here, we see that must go into an office, must be in a controlled environment per se. But no, you got to have the flexibility. You're absolutely right. If you want to go into the office, if you need to go in for your specific duties or tasks, go in. If you want just a different environment, flexibility, especially if firms are looking to hire now, is going to be for the potential candidates going to be very appealing to them. And so having that flexibility and then making sure that that they're still being held accountable and what the expectations are. But you got to have the flexibility, and the mindset of always having to be in the office is the only way to get things done. It's not the case whatsoever, right? So you have to be able to understand the environment, speak with your associates, gauge their thoughts, be collaborative, and the approach to how you're going to be working with your firm. And the staffing challenges, I've seen a lot of firms where some of the employees do not enjoy working remotely, or they don't know how to work remotely. Have you experienced that? And if you have, where's some guidance on assisting new employees or current employees in that type of environment?
I've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of firms after what happened basically with the shutdown on March 15th. And initially, everyone's thought was productivity went straight into the toilet. But when we sat back and we analyzed that a little bit, what we really found out was that for the most part, clients had slowed down. responding to us, and a lot of them didn't really care about the third week in March, about April 15th anymore. So I think we found out internally, and a lot of other firms found out, it wasn't so much a productivity problem. But what I would say is you should think about helping your employees stay productive. And by that, I mean putting their first of all, finding out what they have for a home system, making certain they have a router that's set up correctly, and consider putting them on your tech support plan. What that does, first of all, is that it ensures that they have all the same security tools you have. And also take a look at what they need in terms of printers and scanners. When we saw this was coming, we basically went around the office to everybody and said, what do you need at home? For the most part, it was monitors. And we happened to have all kinds of, I overbought monitors somehow. So we just gave everybody monitors and said, go, and it worked out.
That's awesome.
Really good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you hit it on the dot with dependable Wi-Fi and helping them set up. I'm in New York City, and so there's a lot of instances where friends and colleagues, they don't pay for Wi-Fi. They're using the neighbors or the free public Wi-Fi. Yeah. And it's important to have good Wi-Fi for security too. But most importantly, create an office environment, right? So it's very important. I had one of my clients, and he was sitting on a workout ball, and he just was on his kitchen table because the kids were using the chairs, and he's just like, I can't do this anymore. And so, you think you're working at home. Oh yeah, just lay on the bed. You're gonna fall asleep. Or I could just kitchen table, but yet you have everybody home and the distractions are there. So yeah, you got to set up a comfortable environment that you could be productive in, because there's a lot of distractions. You got to be disciplined, time management. And so the next thing, right? So now you have remote working has opened up the eyes, especially in the accounting community, that remote could be anywhere, right? It could be down the street, be in DC, it could be in New York, or it could be overseas, offshore, right? So what are your experiences with offshore staffing and working in that type of environment?
I should maybe start out with, we've had a group of about 15 remote part-time employees working with us for at least a dozen years. So we were familiar with that a little bit. But this past year, we got into offshore staffing, and it works the same as it does having an employee in Arizona, for instance, because you have time challenges there as well. The key thing is that you've got to have well-established processes so that they can work with you the way an employee in the office can. Now, obviously, they can't walk around the corner and ask a question. So you need some kind of collaboration platform where they can leave a message and you can leave a message back. And that works for us. We use our 𝐟𝐷ity practice management system for it, but you can also set up teams. You can set up a whole bunch, Slack, a whole bunch of environments that allow for collaboration. And to us, it really worked great. Now we have access to an international talent pool. When we were starting to think back last October, we had tapped out pretty much the US client talent pool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the remote team in place, great. Now you have an offshore team assisting, and yeah, it's the talent that's available out there. People just think it's an American workforce, and it's always been a global workforce. And now it's made them realize, let's explore it and see the options out there. I mean, as long as they're dependable and they're experienced, and they are comfortable in that type of environment working with you, and you interview them, and you treat it like it's your own employee, just because it's remote and you may not ever see them. There's so many tools and technology out there that you need to utilize and understand, and access this talent, and be able to take off certain gaps in your firm, right? They have the ability to do data entry. They have the ability to do team leads or mid-level management, set up that the projects for the senior level. And then, or you need senior level, assisting everybody and overviewing the work. A lot of times I see the backlog, or what's being bogged down is the reviewers, right? Yep. So you need more of them. And so you need to assess what you have now, see where you can grow opportunities, and bottom line, how you can help out your clients. It's the most important thing.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the reviewers, because that's a big issue for us internally. It's very hard to find reviewers. So this coming year, we're going to hire offshore staff to be doing some reviews. And the time difference really turns out to be more of a benefit than a hindrance, because you can assign a return at 4 p.m. Eastern time. You come back the next morning and the questions are ready for you to send to the client. I mean, you really almost pick up a day that way.
Yeah, it's like how you're no more late nights or anything like that. You just assign the work. Absolutely. They're starting it while we're here sleeping. You have somebody beginning that work. It's on your desk, ready for review. And there's just so many more benefits to the time zone difference than there are, any type of cons to it. Absolutely, absolutely. So, well, I wanted to thank you again for joining me. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention to our audience or talk about right now, Frank?
Just that I think the way to get started is to get started. We have a limited amount of time before January and February are back around. And we don't know how we're going to be working next year. So I think going remote and considering offshore staff to beef up your internal teams, I think is the way to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you, what's the saying? If you fail to plan, then you plan to fail, pretty much. So make sure that if anything was to happen, another pandemic or anything other that's catastrophic or just a disturbance, you're ready. You're ready for it, right? Having everything in place, having a remote team, local team, bring it on. You'll be able to overcome anything nowadays. And so it's very important and keeping an open mind and be able to facilitate for all your employees, be that leader in your firm, and then the clients will just come to you because they trust you, they like you, and they'll be there for you. So, all right. Well, Frank, thank you so much for joining with me today. Any plans for the holiday weekend?
Not really for the holiday, but I will tell everybody that over September 15th, I'll be working from the beach at Emerald Isle. And last year I did the October 15th deadline, and I've worked the final 4. I've gone to the final 4 NCAA tournament 3 times, worked from there. So that's what remote work, that's how it can be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing, I'm taking a little mini vacation myself. I'm leaving tonight, but I'm doing another podcast tomorrow and remotely. And that's the best part of it, helping and educating our audience. But yeah, you can be wherever you want to be, and on the beach, that's great. Yeah. So awesome. Well, to our audience out there, thank you so much for listening in. Hope you guys learned some things today, be able to help you and your firm growth strategies. And for now, take care. Thanks for everyone for your time.